Hello, welcome again to FairTax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
FairTax Guys.
Coming to you live from Western Command, we call it now, your house?
The Western Command Center here.
Yes. But,
just in Western Marion County. So
one thing I'd like to do, if people have not seen last week's episode, they need to go back and check out that interview with Marissa Selvey.
Yeah.
She's got a pretty good head on her shoulders, and we're happy to talk to her.
She has a full complement of common sense.
There you go.
And works. She was the first candidate in the country for the 2022 race to sign the FairTax pledge. The first one. You can only have one first one.
Yes, that's not like being at the top of the heap of the basketball ratings where you can still lose a game and get replaced at the top of the list. No, that's an honor she gets to keep.
So, yeah, that was a good interview. So like Bob said, if you didn't see that, we encourage you to go back. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble. We have our own website, FairTaxGuys.com, all right, in which you don't have to subscribe or join anything. So lots of places to find the FairTax Guys.
Yeah, and I would assume that everyone who has signed the pledge, we're going to offer to do the same interview with them, and I can't imagine anybody's going to turn us down. But we'll be talking to all of the FairTax candidate pledge signers in future shows, so stay tuned for that. But we've been also talking about on FairTax Power Radio about state level FairTax efforts. And we've got wish it could be a little bit better news, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
I'm not giving up. Senator sees progress on consumption tax proposal. This is from the Star Herald, which I believe is a Nebraska paper, May 10th. So it was not too long ago, okay? Although he lost a key vote in the legislature promoting his, I like this language here, Bob, promoting his revolutionary consumption tax reform plan. Senator Steve Erdman says that loss represents progress. And it goes on to say that he thought he needed, I'm not sure of the exact procedure in the Nebraska Senate, but he needed 25 votes to advance to the next step.
Now,
he only thought he had.
What are they talking about? Are they talking about replacing their income tax, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Replacing their income tax with a consumption tax, which sounds strangely like the fair tax.
Yes. And that is a revolutionary idea to some people who can't think outside the box.
Well, actually, I thought the income tax was a revolution away from our revolution. But anyways, so he thought he had 17 votes. He actually got 23. He only missed the cutoff point by 2 votes. So he considers that progress. And he says apparently he's going to be a senator for a few more years, and he's going to keep trying. So, and it is a process.
Maybe after the next election cycle, he'll have a little bit more support, and we can get rid of I'm telling you, the first state to get rid of their income tax and replace it with a fair tax style consumption tax is going to have a tremendous economic advantage over the other states. We're looking at Alabama and Georgia have been the two that we're looking at most heavily, and Nebraska as well. So if people ask, what can we do to help get the fair tax passed? Get it passed in your state first.
That's right.
See how that works.
And it's easier to work on your state legislators than it is on the federal legislature. You know, all politics is local. Well, there's a lot to that slogan. So, okay. Now, co-sponsors for HR 25. If you watched last week's program, and we are recording this on May 14th, we found out today, May 14th, that we had a new co-sponsor, Don Young from Alaska. He co-sponsored. He's now number 23. And we also found out on this day that the president of the Florida FairTax Educational Association has been in communications with Byron Donald's office. Byron Donald is a newly elected congressman here in Florida, District 19. That's the Fort Myers, Naples area. And he did sign the FairTax pledge when he was a candidate. And we've been waiting. Okay, Congressman, it's May now, and word has it that he's got the paperwork in front of him. All he has to do is sign it, submit it to wherever they submit it to, and he's going to be number 24 co-sponsor, unless somebody beats him to it.
Well, he's been on TV a lot. I guess he's been busy. You'll see him on the television a lot. Fox News talks to him, Newsmax talks to him.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, he has been busy, and I have to say that when I hear him talk about issues, I generally agree with him. So,
we talked to him at CPAC.
Yeah, that's right.
And mentioning CPAC, I haven't mentioned this for the past couple of episodes. We need 500 FairTax volunteers at the next CPAC meeting. Whether it's going to be in Florida again or whether back in the D.C. area, we don't know. But last CPAC, you, me, and Elaine were the only ones walking around in FairTax gear.
Yep, and Randy was there for one day.
Randy was there for one day, yeah. Give him
credit. We were there for 3 days.
We need a tremendous, just let the people there. There are political people there. There are media people there. And if they see literally hundreds of people walking around with FairTax gear on, hey, this is an idea we ought to pay attention to. So if you can at all possibly do it, make your arrangements to go to CPAC next year. It'll be probably in late February again.
Yeah.
And of course, we get as many as we can get, and we can get some attention.
Yeah, and we got some comments, like from some of the radio personalities. Well, I'm glad to see you're still in the fight. Well, they would be much more impressed if, like Bob said, 500 people showed up and were constantly walking by his booth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ben Ferguson was quite happy to see us.
Yes, yeah.
Of course, Alan Waters saw our shirts and chased us down.
He did.
That was pretty cool. We need to get him to sign the pledge and get him on as well. But,
yep, that's right.
Okay. So now, can I get into the fun stuff now?
Oh yes. All right. Congress.gov.
Congress.gov. We look every week on FairTax Power Radio at some of the absolutely insane things that the Congress critters are putting into the tax code, or trying to put into the tax code, and we're going to start off this one with H.R. 3101 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to repeal the firearm transfer tax and for other purposes. I guess things about firearms, being a big Second Amendment guy, that just catches my attention. Anytime they want to mess with firearms in the tax code. But that's it. Repeal the firearms transfer tax. So apparently there's a transfer tax for
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. Of course, I've never sold any guns. I've just bought them. I wonder if the people that sell them to me have to pay this transfer tax. That's H.R. 3101 to repeal the firearm transfer tax. And again, they always put something in, then they take it out. Then they put something in, then they take it out. Then they put something in. You cannot count on any stability at all in the federal tax code. Now, you're going to have to pay special attention to this one. Quit messing with your computer over here and listen to S 1559. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow certain qualified over-the-counter securities to be treated as readily traded on an established securities market for the purpose of diversification requirements for stock ownership plans. Do you want me to read that to you again?
No problem. I've been waiting for that one to come along. I have no idea what that means.
Well, apparently we have the definition of municipal solid waste. We've got a definition of what is and what isn't a firearm. And apparently our tax code contains diversification requirements for employee stock ownership plans. So again, the tax code, is laying out what you can and can't do with your own money.
Yeah, and today's theme, when we get done with this, is going to be the complexity which leads to fraud, and that is a perfect example. It's not bad enough that the tax code is 76,000 pages when you consider the written legislation, the statutes that are written based on that legislation, the instructions, and then the court cases that have bearing on the tax code. All of that adds up to well over 70,000 pages. And what do they want to do? They want to add a few hundred more pages.
Add a few more to it. So to allow certain qualified over-the-counter securities to be treated as readily traded on an established securities market for the purpose of diversification requirements for employee stock ownership plans. You'll have to ask Senator Tom Tillis what he means, because that's his bill.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can find you another one. Oh, this one's almost as good. H.R. 3038. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to authorize an employee subject to federally mandated retirement age in the 3 years prior to and including such retirement age to make additional contributions toward a qualified employer plan and for other purposes. Again, they're telling what you can and can't do with your own money.
Yeah, and they're trying to make it possible for a person to pump up their retirement.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. If you're within 3 years of retiring, they're going to it's crazy that they tell you how much of your own money you can put into your own retirement savings plan to begin with.
This is not new. When I was teaching, I was surprised that at just before a year or so before retirement, we had some of these elderly teachers who were volunteering to chaperone sports events and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were trying to pump up their final average salary.
Uh-huh. Well, that's it. But the Internal Revenue Code tells you what you can and can't do, how much money you can put towards your. We need to get rid of that and replace it with a FairTax. You know that?
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. I think I got one more down here that we dug up. It's to amend the Internal Revenue Code. This is H.R. 2953. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow penalty-free withdrawals from retirement plans for domestic abuse victims. Again, the government is telling you what you can do with your own money. We're going to let you withdraw some of your own money from your own plan because you are a victim of domestic abuse. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And the thing is, we've talked about the complexity before, all right? We need to talk about it again. I mean, we all know that the income tax is amazingly complex to the point where most of us kind of give up on it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we haven't talked about these, right?
Bob is an expert. Go to work on this.
Bob is an expert on Rubik's cubes. All right, this is your 11 by 11.
Again,
right?
if you're listening on an audio-only podcast or on the radio stations, what I have is my 11 by 11 Rubik's cube.
Yeah.
That is all scrambled up. I think it takes me a little over an hour to put this back.
Yeah, and then the next larger one represents the flat tax.
But it doesn't stay flat for long. As soon as the ink dries on the legislation, the lobbyists start messing with it again.
And then there's the little 2x2 that represents the FairTax. Okay.
So take your pick, folks. Which one do you want to mess with? This one or this one?
Yeah, I think I might handle the 2x2, but
we'll find out.
Or if it takes you. But that's a good representation, a visual representation of the FairTax.
I've got another cube that we don't have that the colors change. It's impossible to solve because the colors keep changing. You talk about
you turn it?
Yes, as soon as you turn it in your hand, the color changes, or some of them do. So you can't solve that one because it keeps changing on you. And that's what the instability this is the complexity of the tax code. The other one is the instability of the tax code.
Yeah. And, but that's a good representation.
So I know what I'm going to be doing when I get back home.
The income tax is amazingly complex, and that complexity costs us. It costs all of us, all right? First off, businesses have to comply with the tax code. They have to make sure that they're not only in compliance with all the nooks and crannies, but they also have to look in there and see if there's some legal loopholes they can take advantage of, all right? Everybody, it's for instance, for us, I mean, Bob and I are retired. A lot of people are retired. Our taxes are pretty simple, okay? But let's say that we were doing our taxes and we decided not to take the standard deduction. Well, that would be pretty foolish.
Yeah, but if you're doing TurboTax or some other tax preparation software, they ask you about all your deductions anyway, and then they tell you, well, you're better off taking the standard deduction. So that's right. Just time that you have to spend that you really shouldn't have to spend when you can just pay your federal taxes at the cash register when you buy things, but not have to mess with the tax
for businesses large and small. It's a whole nother story. I mean, we're talking about many levels of income tax paying, and businesses have to spend resources on, one, keeping up with the tax code, making sure they're 100% legal, and two, researching the tax code to see if there are some legal loopholes that they can legally reduce their tax burden.
So they got to pay some pretty high-priced professionals to keep an eye on all that for them, because it's way beyond the capability of most folks. And it's actually way beyond the capability of a lot of the pros. Remember the Money Magazine thing?
Yeah.
When they gave the same information on a hypothetical family to 50 different tax preparers. And this was, back in the 80s.
Yes, late
40
80s.
years ago. And all the complexity that's been added to the tax code since then. But they asked 50 different tax preparers, what does this family owe in taxes? They got 49 different answers. From people whose job it is to keep up with the tax code and correctly apply it. It is just incomprehensible even to the people who do it for a living.
And another aspect of that study was not only did they come up with 49 different answers out of 50 different tax preparers, but the diversity in what they would charge the family. Some of them was a few $100s. One of them, at least, was a few $1,000s.
Are you talking about the preparation fees?
Yes,
and you're talking about also the difference in what they arrived at. One said this family owes like about $7,000, and another one says that owes $13,000.
Yeah.
There's just a tremendous amount of disagreement. They've got 49 different answers, and a lot of them weren't even close to each other. They were just all over the place.
So imagine you're in business. I mean, it could be a small business, just your mom and pop business, or you could have 50 employees, or you could have 5,000 employees. It's incumbent upon you to make sure, like I said, one, making sure you're complying 100% in compliance with the tax code so you don't get in trouble, and two, making sure that you're taking advantage of all the legal loopholes that apply to your business, okay? Because if you're not, first off, if you're paying more than you legally need to, that's not good business, okay? All right? And two, if you're not complying with the tax code, you can get in real trouble. All right.
Yes.
The IRS has computers that scan the returns, and they look for red flags. And if they find one, another thing about the IRS, if they do request or demand an audit, first off, you're guilty. Okay. Forget the Bill of Rights. All right. Forget the Bill of Rights. There is no Bill of Rights when it comes to the IRS. You're guilty. There's no presumption of innocence. There's no due process. There's no protection against unreasonable search and seizure. All that stuff is out the window, all right? And we need to do this, okay?
Mm-hmm. Defund the IRS.
So the complexity, well, that leads to another issue. That leads to fraud. First off, we've talked about this before. We have a lot of evasion with the income tax. People who are either purposely or unknowingly evading the legal amount of tax, all right? They can purposely evade, like an individual, by under-reporting your income or over-reporting your deductible expenses. This happens a lot, okay? So there are individuals who contribute to this evasion. And what's the problem with evasion? So they're getting away with it. Big deal, huh, Bob?
Well, except that you and I have to make up the difference.
Yeah, and the difference is around $800 billion this year, and it's rapidly approaching $1 trillion a year. That's not going to the tax coffers that should be, and as Bob just said, the rest of the American taxpayers have to make up the difference, okay? Just think of what we could do with our deficit, which is growing tremendously in the last few years, all right? If we had an extra $1 trillion of income, okay? Now, compare that to the sales tax. I mean, a sales tax
you can't evade that.
Yeah, it's really difficult to evade a sales tax. You can't go into a store and buy whether it's a big ticket item or a pair of socks or something, and avoid the sales tax. It's not going to happen.
But I tell you what really galls my gizzard is when I read these stories about the IRS sending billions of dollars on fraudulent refunds. People file fraudulent returns. You're talking about fraud. Sometimes it's identity theft and they actually steal somebody else's refund. Sometimes they just make stuff up and send it in, and you can get literally hundreds of refunds delivered to the same address, and they don't seem to have a problem with that. That should be easy to catch.
So I did a search, on the internet, income tax fraud. First off, you get a lot of hits when you do that.
I bet.
I'm just going to read some of these. Internal revenue fraud. This is from Quickly Answers. All right. How do you report suspected tax fraud? Tax fraud definition, Investopia. Understanding tax fraud. Types, penalties, in real life. Tax fraud and tax evasion. Penalties explained. Income tax. Fraud versus negligence. Fraud. Earned income tax credit. Tax fraud, what's a felony and what's not? Who goes to prison for tax evasion?
How do you draw the line between an honest mistake and fraud?
And the last one here is, and they had to get into this, how to turn someone into the IRS. No, there was another one that
12 steps to do that.
Yeah. So, anyways, there was one there about catching up with Donald Trump and his attempted fraud. Wait a minute, all right? We're gonna handle that again. These multi-billionaires like this, these extremely wealthy persons, the IRS is constantly auditing them, constantly, because they have obviously very complicated tax returns. So
yes.
To say in print that somebody is getting away with tax fraud because you don't like them, it just is a demonstration of your ignorance of the real facts on the ground.
Yeah, but you mentioned all these humongous compliance costs that the businesses have to put up with the current income tax, in addition to the actual tax liability. What happens to all those costs?
Yeah, they're a cost of doing business, aren't they?
Who pays those costs?
Yep, they're customers.
Yeah, the current administration seems just, hell-bent, if I can use that term, on taxing the bejesus out of new corporations, and they don't seem to understand that the corporations are just going to pass those costs on to their customers, to their stockholders, people like that. People are going to pay every penny of these corporate tax rates.
Yep, every time. Neil Borth used to say on his show, corporations don't pay taxes. They're a cost of doing business. Their customers primarily pay the taxes and the compliance costs.
Yes,
and for many of these corporations, the compliance costs are worse than the tax itself.
Oh, absolutely. And so you can promise you're not going to raise taxes on anybody that makes less than $400,000, but you're going to drive the prices of everything they buy up.
Yeah.
And you'll never see it on your receipt as this is a tax that's been imposed on you. Sneaky.
Yep. So there's two kinds of fraud. There's fraud in which people try to defraud the American public or the American government, the U.S. government, which means they're defrauding the rest of us, okay? And there's also fraud that is perpetrated on individuals, okay? The item Investopia here, they had the sneakiest IRS scams. Now, that doesn't mean that the IRS is scamming you. The IRS is bad enough in the fact that they ignore the Bill of Rights. But these are, here's how IRS scammers operate and what you can do to fight back.
That's somebody trying to scam the IRS and get a refund that they're not entitled to or whatever.
These are some of the key takeaways. I'm going to go down through these because they have a dirty dozen here that I want to talk about. Thousands of people fall prey to IRS scams each year, losing millions of dollars in the process. Actually, hundreds of millions of dollars.
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay. IRS scammers try to scare people. All right. While phone scams are most common, there's other ways of doing it. And if you think you may have been contacted by a scammer, report it. Okay.
There's a video on YouTube of a police captain talking to one of those sets, and the scammer is threatening to send a police officer over to arrest him. And he has no clue that he's talking to the captain of a police department in North Carolina.
I have not seen that.
That's incredible. I'll have to send you the link to that.
Okay, the IRS's dirty dozen tax scams, phishing, emails and websites that pretend to be from the IRS to entice people to divulge their personal information. And they get your name from one site, they might find your social security number someplace else and so forth. When they get enough information, they can really hurt you. Okay. Phony charities, fake charities that often call names. That's why my wife and I have a policy. When we get a phone call, no matter who it's from, we do not take solicitations over the phone because there's no way we can verify them. My wife has a list of charities that we donate to, and they've been verified. That's what we do. Okay. Threatening phone calls.
Yes, but
criminals posing.
Don't call the local police department.
Criminals posing as IRS agents, threatening people with arrest, deportation, license revocation, social security number cancellation. They're going to cancel your social security number.
Right.
Yeah. Social media scams. Scammers impersonate you and go after your friends, or they impersonate your friends and go after you. Okay? So you got to be careful there. Economic impact payment statements. Now, this is two parts. Okay? Criminals can file a false return. Once they get enough information information, they can file, and it doesn't take much, they can file a false return and claim a big refund, which they send to another address because they put in a change of address. And we know one of our friends here in this area, Bob Matthews, was victim of this. All right, he didn't find out until the IRS started tapping his Social Security that he had been defrauded, and it took him a while. The other type of fraud, with the recent pandemic and the CARES Act and the stimulus checks and so forth, all right, there's people, I got to read this. How much time do we have?
You got about 3 minutes.
Okay, I got to read this because this really makes my blood boil. All right, some nursing, the recent trend, some nursing homes, care facilities have tried to steal CARES Act stimulus payments. People in nursing homes that can't even take care of themselves are being defrauded by these. I won't say what I was going to say. Anyways.
Yes, family show.
Yeah, it's a family show. All right. And they go on scams to non-English speaking people, okay? Dishonest taxpayers, unscrupulous. Oh, tax preparers. And this happened to a friend of ours, a lady who lives in the southern part of Florida, and she told me about how this tax preparer was going to get her all this money. And I was thinking, you don't make that much. How could you possibly do that? So they sent in the thing, she got a big refund, and guess what? A year or two later, the IRS comes figuratively knocking at her door and saying, we got a problem with your tax return. She had to pay all that back. And where was the tax preparer when she needed him? Gone. Yeah, never to be seen again. So it's a big problem. Complexity and fraud are just more reasons we need to get rid of this income tax and go to the FairTax. And you can help us by going to FairTax.org. The Americans for Fair Taxation is the national group. You go to their website, FairTax.org, and sign up and get to get updates and so forth. And we ask you to go to FairTax.org/1040 and join the 1040 Club, in which you commit to sending $10.40 a month. Those regular payments to the AFFT are very important to them, and you won't get spam when you sign up with them. All right.
Again,
what else?
We mentioned last week, go to PopVox. Let your Congress critters know that you support the fair tax. And actually, you can go to some of the other other tax proposals that aren't the fair tax and say, this is not as good.
Yep.
So you can do that. And the Congress critters do pay attention to that. They have at least one staff person whose job it is to monitor PopVox and see what the hot button issues are and see what their constituents are thinking, and hopefully that they will go with the interest of their constituents and not their party leadership. Who knows?
And if you would like some fair tax materials, like these handy dandy palm cards, go to fairtaxstore.org, simply fairtaxstore.org, and you can order stuff. Mike, one of our board members here in Florida, takes care of that, and he ships every Friday. So you can order shirts, you can order pens, all right, campaign buttons, hats, and so forth. And he ships every Friday, and you'll get them. We demonstrate your support for the fair tax.
All right, and that's going to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Fair Tax Guys reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it. Follow the FairTax Guys on social media and their own website, fairtaxguys.com, and check back every week for a new